We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young, a very special podcast that is available on all the biggest podcast aggregation networks and distributors like iTunes and Spotify. And of course, we are also carried on our friends, our flagship group at cannabis.net, clnsmedia.com, and of course, on all of the Pro Cannabis Media social media outlets. I'm your host, Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and this week we are going international. We're going to the island nation of Jamaica, and joining us is Omari Jackson. And Omari Jackson, not only is he a graduate of Emerson College, a university in the greater Boston area where I got to teach this past semester, but he's also a filmmaker, a multimedia journalist, and a producer, and someone who calls Jamaica and Montego Bay his home. Omari Jackson, welcome to In the Weeds. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jimmy. Nice to meet you.
Now, tell me a little bit. In the back of you, it says Ganjactivist. It's an Ganja activist, together in one word. Explain how you branded that and exactly what are you up to with the Ganja Project of Jamaica.
The Ganja, well, those are two separate projects. But
I understand. So now you get to talk now, Omari.
No, well, thank you. Thank you, no problem. All right, get this. Well, the brand is Ganjactivist. Ganjactivist.com is the website that I started up as just to bring media to the landscape, especially media out, because there's not a lot of content coming out of Jamaica, not even content for Jamaica, and Jamaicans are very curious about the industry. So I figured I'd fill in that role. I have run into that exact problem, that because I kind of brought ganja and activists together, people immediately call it ganja and assume that is what that's what the website is about. And I'm trying to claim to name that this is the Ganja Activist website of Jamaica, and that's actually not the case. It's a brand of the two kind of mixed mesh together. Basically, yeah. In a nutshell, it's Ganja Activist in a nutshell, but everyone likes it open, so I don't know, it gets confusing at times.
No worries. What do we call it? Irie, man? Isn't that what it's about?
Irie, all good. It's all good. Irie, always, man.
It's all good. So tell me about the Ganja Project and what you're up to now.
Well, the Ganja Project is a television, it's a video series right now that I'm going to start putting together and launch it hopefully as soon as next month. That's going to be, once again, this information about cannabis, ganja, the ganja industry in Jamaica and globally, kind of for Jamaicans, for the Jamaican audience, and those who are interested in Jamaica, because obviously it's a lovely place to come. And then I will, piece that together to put into a television program to put onto local television before the end of the year. But it's just another form of media, getting more media out there, more intelligent, pertinent media that's going to be relevant to the Jamaican context and the industry. And try to get Jamaicans to embrace the industry more, because that's what's lacking a lot in Jamaica. People are of the belief that Jamaica, but when the prevalence of ganja use is not as high as people think it is, and even the acceptance of ganja and as an industry, it's actually quite low. So that is actually a stumbling block of the industry itself in Jamaica.
And for those of us from outside of Jamaica looking into the island and the reputation of the trade of cannabis in Jamaica, it has always been part of the culture there. And of course, when you think of Jamaica, you think of the Rastafarians and the group that is really waves the flag, if you will, for the way the plant interacts with the soul. Is that an accurate description of ganja and also the role it plays with the Rastas?
Well, that's you said a lot in a little bit, but
that's what I did.
Because in many ways the ganja culture there's a Rastafarian culture that is separate from what I guess we'd call mainstream Jamaican culture, and the ganja is kind of hovers between the two, and so it has its yes, with the Rastafarian community, that is purely sacramental, that is very spiritual. People understand that. And that has been a huge part of what has helped the decriminalization happen, that happened in 2015. As far as the social acceptance across the board, its use is tolerated. I mean, that's just accepted. Some people don't like it, but whatever, they will tolerate it. But as far as acceptance, and even people accepting the industry and getting into it, and people, even taking CBD products, there's still the notion of the devil's weed, and that permeates throughout society. And yeah, I have family members who are like, ganja, oh my goodness, what is that? I was like, really? Are you kidding me? It's a pop culture. Like any pop culture, it is really like a small it's carried out within the actual culture itself. It's not as strong.
But hang on one second, because I got to remind people once again that we are supported by Revolutionary Clinics, the 3-location medical dispensary in the greater Boston area, and at Rev Clinics in Fresh Pond, in Central Square, and in Somerville. You will find the finest quality patient advocates. You will find the finest quality flower and concentrates. And remember, at Rev Clinics, the patient always comes first. Anyway, back to the show and back to what we were talking about. I appreciate you waiting for a sec. And that's fascinating to me. I mean, in the United States, as you know, there's this history that was started by the white man who wanted to control the pulp industry back in the 1920s and 30s, and that led to the Prohibition. And it was funded by the Hearsts and the DuPonts of the world. They were afraid of the hemp industry impacting their forestry industry, and that formed the.
There's some media giant involved in there somewhere as well, because you got to have the media.
Well, that's right. Well, yeah, exactly. It was Hearst. It was Randolph Hearst. And anyway, long story short, that funded the propaganda that led to reefer madness, that built the stigma of 80 years that we continued to fight in the United States as this green wave slowly moves across the country here in the United States. It's already obviously been accepted north of the border in Canada. Mexico continues to battle their own internal politics, if you will, of the drug cartels trying to get it into the legitimate arena, if you will, of politics and legality. And, Omar, when people ask me, what stock they should invest in and how can I get into the cannabis industry? And I said, find a good law firm to invest in, because that's going to be the one industry that's going to survive it, no matter whether cannabis makes
it. Yeah, on either side, definitely. That's right, for sure.
Exactly right. But it is a fascinating thing to me that you would think, and again, this is definitely stereotypical, definitely prejudice, that Jamaicans, are pro-cannabis. But you're telling me in your country that you're still fighting that stigma, even in your own family, you said.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, put it this way, we suffered the same propaganda that you guys did in the US and Canada and so on. And then we got the British post-colonial, tyranny coming down on us culturally as well. And the majority of Jamaicans are Christians as well. So that just gives you the foundation for where that stigma comes from in Jamaican society. I mean, when I went to I went to boarding school when I was 14, and one of the things that I purposely did when I left the country, I didn't have dreadlocks or anything at the time, was I myself completely with ganja. I was like, people, oh, you ever tried ganja? Oh, God, me, no, never. God, that's disgusting stuff. Are you kidding me? No, that's just like the Rastaman thing. Those people from the street. That's literally what this is what we were taught. It's only after a couple years and seeing my friends and then trying to be like, what, really? It's like, no. And then learning, because my brain likes to work like that. And realizing that this is, it's just nonsense. But anyway, but then that was through a process of education. And a lot of Jamaicans have not gone through that process of education. Some are unwilling. Now, I guess because we have CBD, and now it's really kind of, getting, I guess, conscious of their health because of COVID. They're things are maybe, you know, it's shifting somewhat societally. But yeah, that's been a real struggle. This is why it took, in 2015, it took a tragic incident to really instigate the Decriminalization Act that was passed.
Can you expound on that? I'll admit I'm not sure I'm familiar with what that tragic incident was in 2015 that led to.
I personally, I do not have specifics. I was not in Jamaica at the time. I understand there was a death in a prison of an inmate who was remanded for a very small amount of ganja. And they said, you see, now this is just nonsense or bullshit. Sorry if I'm sure I can say that on this stage. Yeah, you know, and that was, I mean, it was on the table, but that was the final. It's like, okay, this is it. Come on. You know, and that's really what the straw that broke the camel's back. But yeah, that's been a fight. I mean, even now, I'm from what I understand, Minister Shaw, who gets called, well, he says jokingly, of course, amongst the community, that he's called the Ganja Minister, the Minister of Ganja, and this and that, which I wouldn't mind that title, but anyways, but he, you know, there's still some opposition to this and that, but it's the industry has not taken hold in Jamaica much at all. There's little embracing across the board. I mean, there are people who are curious and they want to get involved, but that is a part of why you'll see that there are sputterings and stagnation in the development of the industry in Jamaica, and that is the reason why. Because I mean, in fact, I'll call it out. I think our Prime Minister thinks the same way, so he doesn't really see a vision for the industry. He just says, well, they're doing something, and I guess it's legal now, so let's see what we can. Well, it's almost legal. So because they're waiting for, of course, America to federally legalize so that it can use banking resources, because we have the same problems that essentially the U.S. do as well.
Right. So no banking, but. And I, you know, it's funny. I did talk to some natives. One gentleman who was educated in the United States, like yourself, who's in the financial services realm, and he was very curious about it. And he was very open, saying, "Look, you know what? It's been here for a long time. We now understand some of the scientific research that is behind the plant, and it has allowed the natives to look at the Rastas specifically with a little different eye and perhaps reputation. And I also know that they're trying to give an opportunity for those in Jamaica who obviously embrace this plant spiritually as well as agriculturally, and give them an opportunity to actually own a piece of the pie, or at least a piece of the pot, as it were. Where are you right now as far as the laws, the businesses coming in, perhaps to invest in the soil? Can you get licenses to grow it? Where exactly are you in this stage? I know it's decriminalized. That much I learned when I was in Jamaica.
Right. Well, yeah, for sure, it's decriminalized. That's why if you walk the streets, there's not that much difference. But yes, it has been decriminalized.
Yeah. No, and you can go into a dispensary.
No, well, see, that's. I mean, there are a lot of. Sorry, no, go ahead.
I said you can go into a dispensary and have an adult beverage and smoke a joint and hang out and talk with your friends. I mean, it's a very, it was like being in another world. In fact, it was being in another country. But it was a fascinating time for me to walk into a bar, basically. I was over the age of 18. I was very happy that I didn't get carded, but it is what it is. I'm the OG. I'm comfortable with that. And then I met some great people, and we hung out and we exchanged herb and stories and had a drink, and it was just like normal almost. I mean, we'd like to think it's going to be normal up here in the United States and in Massachusetts, but it's going to take still quite a bit of time for us to accept that up here in the States. And what is it? Where are you now as far as that goes in Jamaica with the laws, and who's got the money that's actually trying to drive this? Because I'm pretty comfortable with the fact knowing that money does drive most politics.
Most, I mean, that's a lot of different questions. I mean, as far as put it, because of the decriminalization, you know, access, of course, that's a lot easier. You have your dispensaries, you have your herb houses, you have regular bars. Some will allow you to smoke and so on and so forth. And there will be no real persecution. It is against law to smoke, just to smoke cigarettes, anything in public. So, you know, if a cop passes you, they can ask you to put it up. That's pretty much as far as that will go.
Right, but they're not going to arrest you and put you in jail. They may write you a ticket, right?
Most certainly not. No, you're good to go. Those days have ended. That ended in 2015. Thank goodness. You know, I stuff myself for a small split, but that's a story for another time. As far as the accessibility, well, all right. Well, the Rastafarians as well. The Rastafarians, they have a free pass that they can grow and consume as they, but they cannot sell. So they do not have commercial licensing. They cannot sell. They cannot export, which of course is a problem because they've not traditionally been the most economically resourced entity, you know, especially in Jamaica. But then you have this. You have the larger entities who are coming in. Some of which you have some Canadian companies who have invested quite steeply in Jamaican entity. Well, let me roll it back a little bit as well. Oh goodness, what is the percentage? Right, the percentage, straight off the bat with the CLA, that's the Cannabis Licensing Association, when they issued the regulations to allow for the licensing structure, basically, in order for a company to exist within the cannabis industry, 51% must be a Jamaican entity. Okay. So that's your Jamaican resource, and then of course a lot of the finances is coming in to cover the remaining 49%. A lot of that is coming from Canada. I do know of a couple entities like Freya, who just was supposed to have an operation here, and they just closed that to consolidate to do something else, which is fine. I don't think that's a reflection of that level of the industry locally. But it's getting off the ground. It really, really is. I mean, licenses are being issued, dispensaries are opening. They're still in the works of trying to get the exportation structure organized. Of course, there's issues with the United States. There's of course the banking as well. So that's holding things back because of the intermediary banking. Our intermediary bank in Jamaica is of course an American bank, and because it's not federal. So cannabis is not federally legal. Basically, the Jamaican banks are afraid that they can come down on us for illicit behavior, even though cannabis or whatever, hemp and so on and so forth is legal. It's a risk that banks don't want to take. I mean, banks, despite the amount of money you have, you think they should be the biggest risk takers in the world, and they're the least.
But so let me ask you a question.
Those are the things that are stifling things. But sorry.
Let me ask you a question about the banking. They've allowed credit unions in the United States to take cannabis ancillary businesses and direct cannabis dispensary money and bank with credit unions. Do credit unions exist, and is that same opportunity available for the Jamaican licensee?
It is that, well, credit unions most certainly do exist. That is something that has been, I do believe that there was a gentleman from one of the one of the major Ganja Farmers Associations in Jamaica, who was suggesting that there's apparently an agricultural credit union that they're trying to use that for the industry. That was not allowed. I don't specifically know where the banking with the locally structure is, but I mean, you will hear when they speak, they will say that it is a cash-based business. They cannot get appropriate banking services. Obviously, there's levels of banking service that they're able to access. How that is structured through the system, I cannot personally tell you.
Okay, fair enough. That's okay. I'm always just looking for the compare and contrast between the two countries, and Lord knows in the United States we've got plenty of issues going on. And then in the middle of all this, you've got the COVID-19 pandemic. And, that may be one of the reasons why the Canadian companies may be pulling out or readjusting themselves as far as, what they do in Jamaica and kind of bringing their own dollars back into their own country until we're able to find a vaccine and kind of move on from this horrible virus that has killed so many people all over the world. So let's change the subject a little bit. Let's spin this back to the plant itself. One of the experiences I did have at CanX 2019 was the opportunity to interview a Rastafarian, the first man. And it was great to actually have an opportunity to talk to them about what role this plant has played in their lives, and why has it played such an important role in their lives. And I was fascinated by all the different elements that the cannabis sativa plant plays in the day-to-day operation, the day-to-day lives that these guys have. And I've embraced it. I totally understand now why, when people say, "Oh, Jimmy, you think cannabis can cure everything," and I say, no, what it does is balances everything. And that is a big difference between a cure and an existence, if you will. How do you view the plant's role, if not just with the Rastas, but also your own experiences, and what role has it played in your life personally?
Personally, well,
Yeah, everybody's got a cannabis story.
everyone has a cannabis story. I haven't thought about my cannabis story. I'm currently going on a cannabis journey, quite frankly. That's the truth. Because I mean, if you think about it, every day you discover more and more about the plant, and even just the biology of the plant, and the compounds, the chemicals, and what it can do, and when you talk about balance, that's exactly what cannabis does. It brings up a level of homeostasis to the body, and if the body can be in a state of homeostasis, then a lot more things would come into balance. You know what I mean? It's struck. And again, the mere fact that there is the endocannabinoid system in the body, then there's the cannabinoid system. It's like that these two things are meant to be together, and that's what my pursuit is right now about. It's just like these two things are meant to be together, so let's get them together. I think that I personally do believe that a lot of the ailments that hurt people in the world, that kill people in the world, is endocannabinoid deficiency. And that's because it's been literally extracted from our lives for the past 60 or 80 or whatever, how many years. I think if we reintroduce it into our lives, like the Rastafarians have tried to maintain in their lives, I think that we will see a much healthier world. And a much healthier world means a lot happier people and a lot less of the crap we also see going on.
And certainly less violence, I can tell you that. For those out there who enjoy their alcohol and have sometimes had too much of it, they know the feelings and the impact it can have on the human body, and the edginess that they get, and the aggression that they get, and the really how it consumes the body and affects it negatively, as opposed to the effects that cannabis has on the body, which does tend to relax it, mellow it out, let things roll off you a little bit better and easier. And, you and I talked before we started recording, and it's one of the reasons why I have my Caribbean virtual background going on behind me there. The movie, The Harder They Come, that was produced in the 70s by the great Jimmy Cliff, the singer, was a big impact on my life. I grew up outside of Boston in Newton, Massachusetts, a very nice suburb of Boston. And the Orson Welles Cinema in Cambridge, on Mass Ave, used to air The Harder They Come at midnight in the 1970s. And, being a high school kid with...
I heard of that. This is something I would have heard this in film school. Yeah, right.
I would hope so. And by the way, you could get that movie. You can see that movie on YouTube. It's available. It's there.
I've visited it. For all this revisiting, that's something just for his history's sake. I will certainly have seen it. Yeah, that was one of the films. But when growing up as a kid in Jamaica in the 80s, that would come on like on a Sunday afternoon television matinee type of thing.
Right. And I wonder what did people think of it, because it did expose a little bit of the culture of the Rastafarians, of the battle between the drug trade and the law enforcement. It also showed the record industry back then, where the word payola was always seemed to be right underneath the surface when it came to music. What was it growing up? What you say was on a Sunday afternoon matinee on a television or whatever. How did people view that movie? Was it an accurate portrayal, or was it embellished for movie making? And being a movie maker yourself, at least amateur-wise, did they take too many liberties on that?
No, I do. I mean, I remember. I mean, it was probably not a matinee. It was probably evening show because it's not exactly. Yeah, it's not an afternoon show. But,
right, because I mean, there was some R-rated.
I mean,
and by the way,
my experience watching it.
I think it was the first time I saw an R-rated sex act. Let's just say.
Yeah, but my experience watching it at the time, it was Jamaicans. I mean, well, it was it was out long before, around when I was born. So I was watching, to them it was like a Jamaican classic, and that's the way that it was seen. It's a classic movie.
You froze on me. This could happen. We've had dropouts a little bit in this conversation, and now you've frozen on me. And it's really too bad, because we were just about to get into the whole Jimmy Cliff story, which I can certainly expound on and fill some what we would call dead air in the world. Omari, are you back with us?
Yes, I think so. Something went very weird there. Hello.
No, that's all right. I hear you. I'm fine. You're fine now, but you did go away. I filled, and I talked about dead air. That's what we call it in the business when we have a technical issue and the fallout of the audio and what have you. But I think you're back now, right?
Okay, yes, I can hear you now. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know where I left off.
Well, we were talking about Jimmy Cliff, and I was going to get into the whole story. Look, it was a cultural film for the protest era American in the 70s, 60s and 70s. I grew up in the protest era. We were involved with an unpopular Vietnam War at the time. And, I was in my early teens when all that happened. And I had an older brother who was a big influence. So I would protest along with my older brother and his friends the war, and becoming a rebel a bit and pushing up against the establishment. Right on. Absolutely. Going to commit acts of civil disobedience by rolling up Jamaican, that's right, we're rolling up Jamaican, there you go, there's your peace signs. I gave out those peace signs at my bar mitzvah in 1970, okay? So it gives you an idea of where I'm at, all right?
It's a timeless icon.
Absolutely, and I've got my timeless icon right here. You know what I'm going to put on it before the end. But the point, again, where I'm going with this is I'm trying to explain my own how I viewed The Harder They Come. And I loved the music. And I loved who doesn't love Bob Marley? Come on, man. I mean, it was such an influence. It still is. The whole reggae music scene is something I've always embraced and liked. I've always enjoyed live music anyway. I marvel at all musicians. But let's go right to the chase. I was a freshman at Tufts University in 1975. It was one of the greatest years of my life, because not only was it the year I graduated high school, class of 75, but I also joined the drinking age in Massachusetts in 1975 was 18. And I moved into college on my 18th birthday in September of 1975. It also was the fall of the greatest World Series championship between the Boston Red Sox and the Cincinnati Reds in 1975 that Red Sox fans still claim we actually won that World Series 3-4, which is not true, because you have to win 4 games to win. But the Game 6 of the World Series in 1975 was still one of the greatest baseball games of all time. I got to be there in person when the Reds played at Tufts, when there was 4 days of rainouts in 1975, and the Reds had to find a place to practice indoors. They came out to Tufts University in Bedford, and me and my friends would go down to the Cage, which was the indoor facility for the gym, and we would heckle the Reds and Johnny Bench and Pete Rose, and hey, you guys, we were 18-year-old obnoxious males. I mean, what can I tell you? It's just, did we smoke weed? Yeah, we probably did, Omari. Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, the night that Jimmy Cliff did a concert in Boston at the old music hall, which was right down the street from Emerson on Tremont Street. It's the Bach Center now. It was the Wang Center, the Bach Wang Center. And Jimmy Cliff sang, and the old underground FM radio station WBCN carried that concert live on the radio. And my friends in my freshman dorm would sit around and we'd listen to that concert. And then, of course, it was, 10:30, 11 o'clock, 11:30. And what's on at midnight in Harvard Square, Orson Welles Cinema? The Harder They Come. Let's go. Why not? Right? We all pile into the car. We go. Sure enough, we watch the movie. At the end of the movie, who stands up in front of the movie theater to say hello to everybody? Jimmy Cliff. And who walks up to him and shakes his hand and says, I've watched you and admired you from afar for a long time. I so appreciate your work. I got to say hello to him. I walked. And the best part is I have friends who can back me up on that story. It's a true story. And I will admit that.
That was the summer of 75.
1975. And I will tell you this.
The summer of 75. That's up right there, man.
Do you remember how red Jimmy Cliff's eyes were in that movie? For the most part, his eyes were just bloodshot the whole movie, right?
Yeah, I remember noticing that.
When I met him face to face before social distancing, his eyes were bright reds too. Okay, so
I met him in person. Yes.
and I think it's just it's one of my favorite stories to tell, and I'm glad that I can tell it to somebody who's a native of Jamaica who can appreciate that. So.
I can mostly appreciate it. Yeah. No, that was growing up. That was a Jamaican classic. That was. I remember scenes in it, and VHS. People had no, and people would be laughing for days about that stuff. That I mean, it was whether. Well, you did ask the question before. Did people take liberties with?
Yeah.
To an extent, I would say none further than the Jamaican. So that the upper class of Jamaicans would have ridiculed or whatever, caricaturized any other person within society. So it would be I would say appropriately accurate for a media portrayal. Let me go there.
Gotcha. And now what better time for me to don the headgear that I did buy in CanX this past September 2019. So I can't grow the dreadlocks, Omari, but I'm very proud to wear them, and I love the colors. And I've always been a big fan of the Reggae Boys, the soccer team, the national team of Jamaica, as well, because I am a big soccer fan, and swear it. Even in the 1970s, I got to play for my college. So. Omari, look, I definitely want to continue this conversation. I want to talk more about how pro-cannabis media and your cause, the Ganja Project, can somehow or other work together. And we could certainly take that offline, as they say. But I so enjoyed getting to know you a little bit more. I hope you enjoyed some of the stories that I was able to pontificate a little bit. And I hope we get a chance to work together soon in the future.
I share the same sentiment. I've been eager to meet you. In fact, I've seen your work. I like your energy a lot. You look a ball of fun. I can sway both ways depending on how it goes. But no, seriously, it's I would love to do some work with you guys. I'm putting stuff together that I think your work will help to enhance, and I can definitely put stuff together that will enhance your work. I do have a long history of video and film production, starting at Emerson College.
That's
so.
Right.
Yeah, let's take this, as you say, offline for sure.
All right. So, Omari Jackson, and we can find out about your work where? Ganjactivist.com. I'm going to obviously put up a graphic on the lower third to drive people to that so they can check it out. But I do appreciate you taking the time. And I hope one day I get to visit your fine country again and maybe even play that beautiful golf course at, is it Rose Garden? Rose Hall, right next to the Ritz there, where I got.
You're in the U.S. No, this is Jamaica.
I understand that. I'm going to come visit you, I think, before you come here. How's that? Is that fair enough? And I'll tell you, after experiencing it last year, I totally want to go back again. I got to meet Douglas Gordon and his sister, and I really enjoyed my time there. Hung out with Bruce Linton and Steve D'Angelo and a couple of the other legends of the industry from the North American world. And let's all meet in next year. We say in Hebrew, next year let's be in Jerusalem. So next year let's be in CanX in Montego Bay. All right.
Fair enough. Let's do that.
Yeah. All right. So For Omari Jackson, I'm Jimmy Young, the host of In the Weeds from Pro Cannabis Media. We'll catch you next time. Don't forget, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Let's use it responsibly. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
We Talk Now, We Talk News, and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and our friends at clnsmedia.com and our flagship, Cannabis.net. So subscribe, share, and like our videos on all the social media networks out there, including LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the WeedTube, and YouTube. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.